Everyone, and welcome to another podcast about our wonderful Leadership Academy. And with us today, we have Dr. Tonya Miller, and she is the brainchild of the Leadership Academy. And today, we're going to be talking about emotional quotient or emotional intelligence. And this is actually the first subject that's going to be dealt with in the first learning lunch that actually is going to happen on Tuesday, April 19th at 11:45 a.m. Eastern, and it ends at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. So hopefully you'll be able to join Dr. Miller as she goes into this topic with more depth. Tonya, can you tell us a little bit about the what happens at the learning lunches and what their function is?
Sure. Hi, Sherry. Thanks for asking. So the learning lunches are really the live component of the Leadership Academy. I've broken it up into 5 different topics, and we talk about that topic really in depth for a couple of weeks. So every Tuesday, as Sherry's mentioned, at 11:45, we jump on for 45 minutes. I do a brief overview of a component of that topic. So as Sherry mentioned, emotional intelligence is the first one. And then we have some time for some dialogue about it, application in your work environment, as also as for some time for networking and getting to know the people that are on the call with you. And what has been awesome about this is how much people have been able to share and learn from each other. And then you can take that information and apply it right away when you go back to your work environment. So it's really that, application process. How do I take this great information and make it work today?
Thanks, Tanya. And I've gone through some extensive training with you, and I have to tell you that the stuff that we did on emotional quotient or emotional intelligence, and I'll probably abbreviate that to EQ, was some of the most fascinating information that we learned. And with the current environment, how would you go about stating what you mean by emotional quotient or EQ?
Okay. Well, first of all, the main thing to learn about emotional intelligence is that is a learned behavior. So if you ever just met those people that kind of really sync with other people and, are really in touch with like how the room feels or how things are happening in an environment, you're like, wow, they're really in touch. They get it. That's not a natural thing that just happens. They've practiced it, they've learned it. So, the really cool thing about emotional intelligence or EQ is that it's a learned behavior. So, you can practice strategies and get better and better at it. And the better your emotional intelligence is, the stronger leader you are, the better you're able to engage with team members, the better you're able to engage with your customers and clients. It's just an amazing, powerful tool to have in your toolbox.
It feels like it's one of those tools to me, Tanya. It feels like it's something that's a lifelong thing, especially as we talk about some of the differences between generations. We still have the boomers that are mostly in the leadership positions in home health agencies. I know that that's true in a lot of healthcare agencies. The expression "okay, boomer," and then you have your Generation X, your millennials, and your Generation Z. So tell me how how developing that strategy or developing that skill can help bridge the gap between the generations.
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. EQ is a ongoing lifelong learning experience. And there's days where you use your EQ a little bit better than others, depending on what's going on in your own life. So having that arsenal, be able to pull that EQ out and really be able to connect with another person crosses generations. So that's the thing that's really powerful about it. You don't necessarily need to know how that generation thinks differently than you or perceives the world differently than you. If you can understand what their emotional response is to something and understand how to regulate those emotional responses, as well as significantly important, understanding your emotions and how to regulate your emotions. You can have an impact and connect with a person no matter what their generation is. So it really is a cross generational skill, and you do keep learning it.
Thanks for that. How would someone go about beginning to understand this skill, and also how they would go about starting to learn the skill?
Sure. So the great thing about it is it's something that you can easily do with a short amount of time in your day. I tell people to start with learning about yourself, and that's what the first session is on. And we'll go into this in a deep dive, but it's really just understanding your own emotions. It is amazing how many times people don't know that they're even having an emotional response because they haven't taken the time to really step back and reflect on how they're feeling in certain times of the day. I give you a great example. Have you ever sent an email And the second you said it, you went, "Oh, man, I should not have said that. I was mad, I was frustrated, and I said it." That's because you didn't use your EQ to recognize your emotion at the time, and you acted on an emotion. So the first part about learning emotional intelligence is literally just pausing throughout the day and saying, "Huh, what's my emotions like right now? Should I change an action that I'm about to do because my emotions are either I'm frustrated or I'm overly happy or something like that?" So it's really just recognizing your emotions.
Also, I just want to mention, I absolutely 100% agree with you. And I think about how some of the ways we communicate nowadays, and we communicate nowadays many times without actually speaking to someone. So you're trying to judge someone's emotions outside of yourself through a written word. And in my opinion, I know when I used to own an agency, one of the things I had to tell some of the folks in my agency is that you cannot assume an emotion through a text. And so can you talk about some of those challenges when you're not actually physically in the same space or actually speaking to someone?
That is so true. This remote environment now in home health and hospice, we've always worked in the remote environment, but the world is now remote. So what we oftentimes do is we project our own emotions onto that written statement. So
Yes.
again, starting with your own self-awareness is where emotional intelligence growth happens. So what am I feeling and how am I seeing this piece of information through that lens? People that can really recognize that and readjust or step away from the situation are the people that can really develop strong emotional intelligence.
Absolutely. And I always go back to that Stephen Covey statement that you seek first to understand. And what you're saying and what I'm hearing is that you seek first to understand yourself. And that kind of gets you
Yes.
towards that emotional quotient.
Yes.
Okay. So what do you think? I know right now one of the biggest challenges in healthcare is hiring. And by hiring, let's extend that to retention. So how important do you think a good, strong emotional intelligence is in that process?
So here's a great thing. I don't have to think about what it is because there's great research behind it. And I'm just going to give you a couple quotes for some research that I have that looks at emotional intelligence and leaders. And one of the statements from one of the research studies shows that managers with higher emotional intelligence have teams with higher commitment to the organization. Wow, how powerful is that? If you have emotionally intelligent leaders, your team is going to be more committed to them and the organization, and you're going to retain staff members. EQ is connected to higher performance and lower risk of losing talent and fosters engaged employees. That's another outcome from another research study. The research is out there. Developing emotional intelligence in your leaders as well as your team members, because how team members engage with each other is really important too. Those skill sets keep people engaged in the organization. So, we think about all the things we do to keep employees. We do sign-on bonuses, we do stay bonuses, we look at the career ladder. If you spend some of those time and resources developing emotional intelligence within your team, you're going to keep those people.
That is so powerful, and that takes me back to a couple of old statements, that I've learned in my time in business. And one of them is culture eats strategy for breakfast. So in my
Yes.
thoughts on that is that emotional intelligence is going to develop your culture in your agencies. And thereby, when you walk into a building, and when you walk into a healthcare facility, or if you walk into a team meeting, you can feel how the room is going, and bounce that off against how you've done your self inventory, and you can have a better experience in that time. And the other one is the other quote that I was going to mention here, Tanya, and because I love quotes, thank you for sharing those. Is nobody cares what you know; they want to know how you care.
Yes. Yes. And
And that,
Sherry,
go ahead.
Sherry, you made a great statement. You said you can walk in and you can feel that room and feel the pace of that room and how that room is doing. Someone with emotional intelligence can. If you haven't developed your emotional intelligence, you might miss the feel of that room.
Yes. And we all
So
know those people. We all know those people that come in and deliver a statement. Maybe it's even a good message, and they can deliver it wrong if they can't take the temperature of the room. So if you want to grow your emotional intelligence, make sure that you sign up for the Leadership Academy and join us on April 19th at 11:45 a.m. for the Lunch and Learn that will take a deeper dive into emotional intelligence. Dr. Miller, thank you again, and we'll be back with another one of these podcasts very soon.
All right. Thanks, Sherry. Have a great weekend.